Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest in our series of talks, Meet the Researcher, hosted by OPENARMS. Today we have Esther Williamson with us here to talk about rehabilitation and what happens after that. And we were due to have Justin Wormold here today, but unfortunately he's not able to make it. We're hoping to hear from him again in the autumn instead. But we hope even if you came here for Justin's talk that you might stay to hear our talks today. My name is Natalie Ford, but I'm going to introduce Louise Haley now, who's going to tell us a little bit more about OPENARMS. Louise.
Afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Natalie. So my name's Louise Haley, and I'm the Patient and Public Involvement Coordinator at NDORMS, based at the University of Oxford. This is in a team that's led by Professor Laura Coates. And if you've been to the talks before, you'll have heard Laura speak. So I just want to say welcome and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Without you, we wouldn't be able to make the events possible, so I'm really grateful for you attending. It's now our fourth event, and they're becoming increasingly popular, which is great news. I'm just going to share my screen with you and just tell you a little bit about OPENARMS. So we're the Oxford Patient Engagement Network for Arthritis and Musculoskeletal Conditions. And because that's a little bit of a mouthful, we're known as OPENARMS. And our research is done through the University of Oxford through a department called NDORMS. And at NDORMS, the research focuses on people who have muscle, bone and joint problems, which are otherwise known as musculoskeletal conditions. And the aim of OPENARMS is to add the patient voice and experience to the research we do to get a better outcome for patients. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about OPENARMS. So OPENARMS is a group of patients, family members or carers, and members of the public who work with medical researchers in our department. We now have 7 patient partners on the OPENARMS committee, which is really important, and I'm really pleased about that because it now means that we've got patient voices embedded in what we're doing. We also have a wider group of patient partners, and like today, one of the things that they can be involved with is the Meet the Researcher talks. At the talks, we have different researchers speaking each month, and it can be anything from a researcher coming up with a new research idea and asking for your opinion on it, or they may have their idea for their research but want input on how to run the study. So maybe looking at whether the assessment process is going to be reasonable to you. You also might hear from researchers who want to start presenting their early results. And we've got a really nice programme planned as the months go ahead for this year. So hopefully you'll hear about things that interest you, and they'll always be focused on research in muscle, bone and joints. So also I just thought it gives me the opportunity to talk about how to get involved. We're still trying to spread the word as wide as possible. The more people that are involved, the better the research that we can do. When I've finished speaking, I will put the contact details in the chat so you don't have to try and scribble them down. So the first thing, if you're not aware, we've actually got a dedicated website. And on the website, you'll find all the activities that we're doing through OPENARMS, and it also gives you details of how you can join us. On the website, you'll find all the details of the Meet the Researcher talks, and previous talks are there that you can actually watch on YouTube if you miss them. We're going to be taking a break next month in August, so the next talk after today will be on the 27th of September. We're currently running on Zoom, and because we're on Zoom, each month you'll need to register for each talk. So just be aware, you do need to register each time you want to come. I've now got printed posters, and the posters that I've got promote the OPENARMS project. And like I say, we're still trying to spread the word. So if you can take a poster and put it up in your local community to try and encourage people to join OPENARMS, I'd be really grateful. Just let me know and I can send you some posters through the post. If you need to get hold of me, we have a dedicated email address. So at the OPENARMS email address, it'll be me that will be responding. If you email me, I've actually got a mailing list. So if you want to join the mailing list, then that would allow you to keep up to date with all the opportunities with OPENARMS, including the Meet the Researcher talks. So every time a talk is due, I can send you a link to the live booking, so you don't need to remember. Also, you could use the email if you've just got ideas about things you think we should be doing with OPENARMS, or if you want to ask me any questions, please feel free to email me at any time. So again, I just want to say a really big thank you for everybody that attends the events, and I'm going to hand you back over to Natalie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louise. So before we move to our speaker, I'd just really like to encourage everyone to ask questions. So somewhere in your Zoom setup, you should find there's a link that says Q&A and has some little speech bubbles or something similar. If you have any questions for our speaker today, Esther Williamson, then please do type your questions into the Q&A box, and then I will ask those questions on your behalf. So now we will move to our speaker, Esther, who's going to tell us a bit more about Beyond Rehab. Esther.
Hi, good afternoon. So my name's Esther Williamson. I'm a physiotherapist and I'm Deputy Director of the Centre for Rehabilitation Research, which is part of NDORMS, as Louise was explaining. So today we're going to talk about Beyond Rehab, and I thought just to start off I'd explain what I mean by rehab or rehabilitation. So according to the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy, rehabilitation is about enabling and supporting individuals to recover or adjust, to achieve their full potential and to live life as full and active as possible. And that's really the aim of our work. So as a research team within the Centre for Rehabilitation Research, we focus on 4 aspects of rehabilitation. I'm just going to share a slide here just to show you this. So firstly, we look at developing and testing rehabilitation interventions to help people recover from muscle, bone and joint or musculoskeletal injuries. And this could be fractures or it could be soft tissue injuries. But we also want to help people manage long-term musculoskeletal conditions. So this could be something like osteoarthritis or chronic back pain. We also are interested in helping to develop rehab interventions that help people to live well in their later years. So this is this idea about aging well. And our final focus is on NHS practice and how we can change practice and make sure that patients are getting getting access to effective treatments. So the study that I'm going to talk about today really crosses all these aspects of rehabilitation. So I'm developing this project with Dr. Beth Fordham, and there's a picture of Beth there on the screen, and she's the health psychologist within our team. This study is at the very early stages, and so it's a great opportunity for me today to tell you about this work and to get some input from our patient partners right at the start. I had a look at the attendee list, and it's nice to see that some of my current patient partners who I've actually been working with over the last couple of years are here today. So hello to those of you that I already know. And it's really just a privilege to be able to share our work and to get input on our ideas at this early stage. So this work is around how we support older people when they complete their physiotherapy rehab to continue to be active and to exercise regularly. Why is this important? So we know that people are living longer than they were, for example, 50 years ago. And in the UK, we have an ageing population. Over the next 25 years, we're going to see a marked increase in the proportion of the population that are over 65 years of age. However, increased longevity does not necessarily mean better health. And there's evidence that shows that actually younger generations are less healthy than their parents. And it sounds good to say that people are living longer, but what people really want is extra years with good health. Okay, so they're able to do the things that they want to do, that they value, to be independent and to have good quality of life. I mean, the alternative is years of poor health, which is really has a negative impact on the individual, but also society, including the increasing need for health and social services and care services. So as we get older, one of the things that we experience is our muscles get smaller and we lose strength. So I'm just going to show you a slide now of what happens to our muscles as we get older. This is a picture of some muscles and the changes that occur in the thigh muscles of a 25-year-old and a 65-year-old. So imagine this is a cut through the thigh. Hopefully this isn't making anyone squeamish. If we look at the picture here, the center bit here is our thigh bone. We've got the skin on the edge, we've got the layer of fat, and then we've got our muscle here. And in the 25-year-old, you can see how that picture is predominantly the muscle. As we get older, we get a change in how this looks, and we get much more fat around the outside. We get fat coming into the muscle, and the muscle itself has generally shrunk. So one of the things that we can do as we get older that can help us to maintain our independence is to stay strong. So our research team has been looking at ways that we can build muscle in older people, and we've got some other studies ongoing that some of the people here today actually have been involved in as well. So age-related loss of muscle mass, strength and power are really critical factors that lead to reduced walking. They can lead to falls, loss of independence, and reduced quality of life. Muscle is actually an organ, and it's the largest organ in the body. And it's responsible for a whole range of functions, some of which are quite obvious and you'll be aware of, but others are not. Movement is the most obvious. Muscles allow us to move, to walk, to lift, to carry out everyday activities. They help us to maintain an upright posture. Other functions that are less obvious is that muscles actually also act as a protein reserve. So this can be drawn down when we're ill or need for survival, so a little bit like fat in that respect. It also helps to regulate our body temperature, and it has important functions in controlling things like glucose and blood sugar levels. So this slide, sorry if people don't like graphs and things, if this isn't your thing, but bear with me, okay? So this diagram shows what happens to our muscle mass and strength, and hence our physical ability over our lifetime. So as we grow, we develop muscle strength, and this peaks during our 20s into our early 30s. And then there starts to become a decline, which is very gradual at first and then more noticeable in later years. And this will have a number of determinants, including what happens to us, when we're babies in the womb, but also social, nutritional and behavioural influence. Decline as we get older is highly variable, and partly it's determined by where we start. So one of the main factors here will be how much muscle you have to begin with. I like to think about this as how much muscle you've got in your muscle bank. And we can all cope with some degree of decline as we get older, until we reach a certain point where we don't have enough strength to be able to function well. And this on the graph is the disability threshold. So once we reach to this line, it represents that we've fallen below the amount of muscle strength we need to be able to go about the activities that we need to do to remain independent. Importantly, this might be something like getting on and off a chair, getting to the toilet, getting on and off a toilet, all really important things that you need to be able to live independently. So falling below that line into that disability threshold section can be triggered by different things, by illness or injury, or it could be very gradual. Minor changes to someone's health can sometimes tip them over the threshold of independence to dependence if they lack reserves, so they don't have enough muscle in the muscle bank to cope with any changes that illness or injury brings to them. The good news is that being physically active and doing exercise is one of the main ways that we can help to maintain our health in later years, and it's a way to get more muscle in the muscle bank so that we can start to slow these changes or even to reverse them in some cases. Public Health England have produced guidelines on the amount of physical activity or exercise that we need to do to maintain our health in older age. This includes being active to an intensity where we get a bit out of breath, where our heart starts to pump a bit harder, but also to build strength and improving balance. So I'm just going to show you a diagram now of these guidelines. So these are the physical activity guidelines for older people produced by Public Health England. And many people will be familiar with this idea of being active regularly. The 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week that we're advised to do. And this really actually applies across all ages, this aspect of the guidance. So this could be things like walking briskly or cycling, swimming, running, going up and down the stairs, things that get our heart rate up a bit, that make our heart pump a bit harder, that make us a little bit out of breath. However, many people are not aware of the need to build strength and to improve our balance. In order to build strength, we need to load our muscles, and we may need to make them work harder. So the most obvious way to do this is to go to a gym class and to lift weights, okay? But actually everyday activities like carrying heavy boxes will do the same thing. We can also do exercises where we lift or move our own body weight, like yoga or step-ups, or even sports such as tennis or squash. And we should be able to be doing activities like this about twice a week. Similarly, we should also be carrying out activities that challenge our balance twice a week. So this could be things like dancing, tai chi, bowls and yoga. And actually there will be some crossover between the different types of activities. So I'm going to ask you a question now. So it's over to everyone there. What proportion of the population of over 65 years of age do you think currently meet these physical activity recommendations? So I can see that actually you're a very clever lot, and we've just over half of you have gone for 15%. And that's about right, actually. For people between 65 and 74 years of age, about 15% of the population meet these recommendations. However, if we look at people who are actually 75 years and over, then that falls down closer to 5%. So actually sort of both those answers were correct, and where the majority of people did vote. So, you know, a good question is, why don't older people exercise more regularly? So there's been studies that have looked into this to try and find out how we get older people to take part in exercise more regularly. Sometimes it's because they're unaware of the importance or the need to build muscle strength and improve balance. Some older people may actually be worried that doing exercise is harmful, and they may lack confidence and motivation to exercise independently. Some older people feel uncomfortable or out of place going along to an exercise class or going to a gym, and they feel uncomfortable, for example, lifting weights. And actually some older people have actually said one of the reasons they don't want to do muscle and strength training is because they don't want to look too muscly. Sometimes life gets in the way as well. People can have competing responsibilities. This might be caring for a sick spouse, it could be looking after grandchildren, or they just generally have a lack of time. People can also be unaware of what opportunities they have in their local neighbourhood or community as well. They may lack transport to get to classes or to opportunities, or they may find that actually they're too expensive. So there's a whole raft of reasons why people sometimes don't take up exercise opportunities. We also know that many older people will experience joint aches and pains, and this can stop them being active as well, especially if they've got pains, for example, in their hips and knees. And these are really common problems. So in a recent study by our team, we reported that around 20% of older people will report hip pain, 40% will have knee pain, and actually 35% will have both. So older people with joint aches and pains are actually at more risk of falling, of having reduced walking, and being less physically active, all of which can lead to poor health and quality of life. Considerable numbers of older people will see a physiotherapist for treatment for these aches and pains. So an example of this is the physio department over at the Nuffield Orthopaedics Centre here in Oxford. They receive about 300 referrals a month for people over the age of 65, and they'll have a range of joint aches and pains or following a fall or other injury. Exercise is going to be one of the main ways to help manage joint aches and pains, and it will be part of physio rehab. While patients are supported by a physiotherapist, they usually find it easier to exercise and be active. But what we've found in the work that we've been doing is once they finish their treatment, it becomes much harder. And then they're at risk of losing the gains that they've made through their physio rehab. And we have data on this from a recent study where we look at what happens over time, and we see as people move away from when they've had their last physio contact, the amount of exercise they report doing reduces. But we also see that their function then also declines. So why do people stop exercising after they finish their rehab? This could also be a range of reasons, some of which I've already covered. But it might be they're just bored with the exercises. You know, the physio's given them a set of exercises, and actually just doing that every day is frankly just really boring. They might feel better, so they don't feel motivated to be doing exercises. And lots of people say that to us, you know, well, my knee stopped bothering me, so I just stopped doing the exercises. Or they just lack motivation to actually exercise without someone checking up on them. So the focus of this research study that Beth and I are working to develop at the moment is about how we could help older people to continue to be active and exercise regularly on their own after they finish rehab. So hence the title of my talk, Beyond Rehab. So one of the ideas that we have as a way to support older people to exercise and be physically active on completion of their rehab is to link physiotherapy to social prescribing services. Okay, and to help them maintain their activity levels and their physical and being physically active, and also to help them maintain those gains that they've made from having physiotherapy in the first place. What is social prescribing? So that's firstly what I'll just explain. So some of you may not be familiar with this term. So social prescribing involves helping people of all ages to improve their health, well-being and social welfare by connecting them to community-based services. And these are non-clinical services that can be used to improve their physical and mental health. And there's a whole range of things that this could include. It could be counselling or support groups. It could be activities in libraries, museums or gardens. It could be music activities or art-based activities. People can get advice on budgeting and managing finances, or they can get advice on diet and nutrition, helping them to lose weight, or even to learn how to cook healthy meals. A link worker who works in a social prescribing service can also prescribe physical activities or exercise groups as part of their social prescription. So this could include things like physical activities like gardening, walking groups, dance classes, yoga, Tai Chi, or sort of formal exercise classes at a gym. And link workers are ideally placed to support older people to take part in community-based programs that can improve their physical activity or focus on strength and balance, such as walking groups, exercise classes, programs to reduce fall. So there's a whole range of activities out there that older people can access. One of the really good things about social prescribers is that they are highly knowledgeable about the opportunities that are available within their local community. And they're also trained to work with their clients to identify activities that they will enjoy to improve their health and well-being, and then to support their attendance at these opportunities. They work in primary care settings, but also within organisations like Age UK. However, we know that not all link workers make these types of prescriptions for older people. So there's been some work done by one of my colleagues in this area. And we know that actually only around 43% of link workers tend to prescribe physical activity and exercise to their older clients. So we really think that this is a missed opportunity to improve the health of older people. So by connecting physiotherapy services to social prescribing services, we can take advantages of the skills of the link workers to support older people to be more active and exercise regularly, and hopefully help them to meet those recommendations by Public Health England in terms of physical activity, with the aim of helping them to live longer, healthier lives. By connecting older people to opportunities in their local community, they can also gain benefits of social interaction, building friendship, support from their peers, and importantly, taking part in activities that they enjoy with the hope that they will continue them long term. As I mentioned, Beth Fordham and I are currently developing a funding application for a new study that will look at this idea. And ultimately, we want to test whether a referral to social prescribing services after physio rehab improves outcomes for older people compared to physio rehab alone. And that's my email just there on the slide if anyone does want to get in touch. The first step of this research is to develop the intervention to be tested and see whether it can be put into practice, whether it is feasible to actually, develop this idea. And this will involve creating a referral pathway from physiotherapy to social prescribing services, which currently doesn't exist. So at the moment, the majority of referrals to social prescribing services come from general practitioners and from practice nurses. But all health professionals can refer to social prescribing services, but physiotherapy departments don't really make use of this at the moment. We also plan to work with patient representatives, physiotherapists and link workers to develop a training package to enable them to be able to work together to support older people to take part in regular physical activity and exercise opportunities. So Beth is going to start to do some interviews with link workers over the next couple of months to find out about their experiences of helping older people to take part in regular physical activity and exercise opportunities. And we're going to hopefully identify barriers to this, but also what their training needs are to set up this referral pathway. So we're also looking for patient partners to work with us to develop this application, because we need to make sure that it's the right thing to do, that we've got, the idea is heading in the right direction, and it's actually going to be meeting the needs of the people who need this type of support. So if you are interested, I would love to hear from you. I know that some of you I'm already in quite regular contact with, so I'm sure you will be hearing from me soon. The application is hopefully going to be submitted in November, so we are just at the early stages of developing at the moment. So before I take questions from the audience, I do have some questions for you and would really appreciate your input. So I think Natalie's going to share some other poll questions now.
Esther, did you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, everyone that's completed that. I'm just having a look. So it seems like generally the idea seems like it's fairly sort of acceptable, with the majority of people, saying that they would be happy to take part or recommend it. So function, I think, is coming up as our one of the most important things to measure. Quality of life and function look like the two most important. That's really, really useful. So thank you for that. That's really helpful, and I'll show that to Beth, and we'll have a think how we incorporate that into our next steps then of working with our patient partners to then start to select some outcomes that we would actually want to take forward into the study as well. So that's really useful.
Well, thank you very much for the talk. It's very interesting. I've got a list of questions, but it looks like we might have more than enough from the audience. So the first question is isn't it important to have tailored exercise fitness regimes? Because otherwise you might be scared to do too much or too little, or be mindful of new or past injuries. So this person's saying they wouldn't have a clue how long they should be active for in one sitting, for example, given that they have injuries and other illnesses that need to be taken into account. So how do you know what's the right amount of exercise to do, Esther?
Yeah, I think that is a really common concern for people about being more active and being, exercising. And I guess that's really why one of the ideas that how this study came about was really that hopefully a lot of these fears are addressed during their physiotherapy sessions, that we have this sort of more specialised, time with the physio who's assessing you and tailoring your exercises so that we take those types of things into account, but also building your confidence, teaching you how to sort of know what you shouldn't be doing actually, and learning how to adjust your exercises and build up. And then the idea with this study would be that we then train up the social prescribers to work with the physios, but also train the physios to work with the social prescribers, so that it becomes a sort of a combined support for that patient as they go forward, leaving the sort of more formal rehab with the physio into that sort of more independent phase of exercise. But they're very common concerns, and rightly so, that people would be worried about these types of things. So that's really why we've thought that this idea of, bringing together these two different services would be a good idea, so that we can make sure that people are getting exercises that are suitable for them.
Excellent, thank you, Esther. We've had a couple of questions from both ends of the spectrum, actually, about the age limits for your study. So someone wanting to know if it's just for people aged 65, and then someone else wanting to know if there's any upper limit if you're over 90. Is that okay?
There's definitely no upper limit. And in terms of age, we do tend to go for 65 and over as the kind of accepted definition of an older person. So that does tend to be the cutoff. But actually that's something that we may actually talk to our patient partners about. And we have in the past actually changed the age range of a study based on our patient partner feedback. And that's really important, that we're actually looking at, a study and selecting the right people to be in it as well. So that at the moment, I would say probably 65, but actually that is open for discussion.
Excellent, that's good to know. So someone here's asking if you're socially prescribed something like a gym class, would that cover the costs, or would that be something you'd have to pay yourself?
Yeah, so that will be very variable depending on which part of the country the study is being done in. So a lot of these gym classes may have a small cost attached to them, which could be perhaps £3 or £4 a session. But then there are also some activities that are provided for free. So, for example, health walks that run through the GP practices in Oxfordshire, I know you don't have to pay for. So there are different opportunities, and that would be something that the social prescriber link worker would be aware of. So they would know what's going on their patch and what is available. Sometimes you can also get referrals for a program called Exercise on Prescription, where you do get some access to a gym classes for free for a certain amount of time. But it would be looking at the different options to what suits the person, because we understand that some people are more than happy and can afford to pay, and other people can't. So it would then be trying to find ideas that would be suitable for each individual.
Okay. So someone here who thinks it's a great idea, but wonders, are there going to be enough physios or exercise therapists or instructors to meet anticipated demand, or do more need to be trained?
Yeah, that's another good question as well. I guess in the context of a study, we To start with, we would just plan to do quite a small study where we would make sure that we had sufficient staff to cover the study. I guess the question's probably actually more important, when the study's finished and when we, actually see whether this idea works or not. Obviously, if it doesn't work, then it's not an issue. We don't need to think about how we provide these services. But actually, if we did a large study and we found out that actually this was a good idea, it did help people to improve their quality of life and improve their function by linking these two services, then it would be then back to commissioners to make sure that we fed this information back, and hopefully they start to put these services in place. And certainly out there in the community, there needs to be investment in probably community-based exercise groups and things, especially if we can show that it works and it makes older people have, to improve their health, then, that's sort of justification for improving those types of services. And that's really why we're doing this research, because it's that type of evidence that then can inform the development of services.
Okay, and then someone else who's asking about, is there any possibility of follow-up post-rehab with physios, I assume this is. So, if you have an operation or some sort of injury, I guess, and you do rehab for 3 months, they feel it would have been really useful to have someone check in at kind of like 6 months, just, or is this supposed to replace that or help replace that? Or is there a pathway for doing that if you feel that you need it?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be highly variable depending on the physiotherapy services you're accessing. I mean, certainly with the work we're starting to do with older people, we are looking at longer contact with physios for that very reason, because often what we find is, if people are seen for, say, 6 weeks and then they're just kind of sent on their own, actually we know that people then sort of struggle. So actually this is one way of providing additional support on the longer term, that they would have their link worker contact. But what we're hoping is that there will be then a feedback into physiotherapy, and the physiotherapist, the link worker, will be kind of working as a team. So that, if needed, we could hopefully provide some support. So there's some of the things that we're just really trying to figure out at the moment about how that would work in terms of the sort of support. So what actually may happen is actually we may find that we have our sort of physio rehab sessions to start with, then they move on to the link worker, but it may be at some point they come back for a review. But we're just working out the ins and outs of all of that. But I certainly understand that people do find that, an important aspect of their care is this sort of longer term follow-up, and and people don't always get it. And I understand that is a concern for people.
Someone here so what happens if you did rehab a long time ago now, but you want access to those social prescribers who can give you advice on how to join suitable classes? So they're saying that they've struggled to find classes for older, reasonably fit people.
Yeah, I mean, one good resource is the Age UK website as well. But also and the Age UK actually have social prescribers working for them as well. GPs can also refer you, or a practice nurse could also refer you to the social prescribing service that's attached to your practice. And there's been a real push to get these set up. So there are lots of these services being set up. And in fact, if you're in Oxfordshire, you're quite lucky, because actually they were one of the pilot areas for setting up social prescribing. So they've actually been doing it a lot longer than other areas in the country as well. And they also have a very good array of classes, particularly Age UK in Oxfordshire run some really good groups. Actually, if there is, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but if people are interested, I can send some links through about exercise opportunities. I think it's called Generation Games, but it might have changed since it was called that.
Getting a thumbs up there from Louise, so it sounds like that still exists in some form.
Good. Excellent.
So how does this sort of fit in with other, I suppose, more medical treatments for joint problems? So how does that process of rehab interact with things like tablets and creams for painful joints, and then that social prescribing on top, where you've got, I guess, 3 different sets of people?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of sort of other adjuncts to therapy, such as taking medication or, creams, I mean, that will possibly be part of your physio rehab anyway. They will advise on medication. If they think your pain isn't being controlled, then often the physios will refer you back to your GP or perhaps your pharmacist for a medication review. But that is all part of the picture that's taken into account, as far as rehab goes. So yes, no, that would definitely be part of things. You know, pain control is really important if people are particularly bothered by their joint pains as well.
I've had an interesting question here about the possibility of having exercise classes online or with videos for people who have social phobia or neurodiversity issues. I mean, I know that my mother's been doing exercise classes from home over the COVID lockdowns. So is that something that you think might continue now that that's sort of been set up?
Yeah, it could possibly. And actually, Age UK in Oxfordshire have done a great job at that. They translated their falls prevention classes into online classes, and there's a whole, if you go onto Age UK Oxfordshire, there's a whole library of videos of exercise sessions and things that you can do. And I think I don't know if they're doing it now, but they were also running live sessions where you could join a call like this, and it was an exercise group. So yeah, no, I mean, I think when we, as part of the training that we do with the social prescribers and, you know, working with the physios, it will be really to look at what we need to have in place so that the social prescriber link workers can be confident to be providing, you know, advice to their clients. And this might be about getting them onto an online exercise group. You know, that's certainly, you know, in the sort of options in my mind that we should be providing for people, because it also may be that actually if you know, have problems with travel or things like that, then actually it's a really good option as well for people to make it more accessibility.
Someone here wanting to know how whether they'll be looking at the role of volunteer carers and how they can be involved.
Well, we haven't considered that as such, but obviously we're at the early stages of planning, so, you know, we'd be open for discussion around that. I think certainly, I'm not entirely sure what you mean by volunteer carers, whether it's the individual's carer or whether it's just sort of volunteers, you know, not related to the patient.
So yes, I'm not sure. I don't know if the questioner wants to clarify that at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was guessing they just mean not paid carers, so friends or relatives, but I'm not sure.
Certainly, I think friends and relatives would be encouraged to be involved, and I think they could obviously be really helpful, perhaps going along with their, you know, with an individual. If they're a bit unsure about going to a group, it would be great if someone went with them. So I've been talking to social prescribing, the link workers within Oxfordshire social prescribing, and they do a great job. They might accompany someone to an exercise class for the first time. They sometimes buddy them up with someone. They look at whether they can sort of help with transport and things. So there's lots of sort of practical things they do to try and help people, you know, start attending these types of opportunities.
Yeah, so they have just clarified they did mean family members who are often sort of helping with caring responsibilities. Yeah. I had a quick question. You said earlier that link workers, although they prescribe lots of other activities, tend not to prescribe physical activities as much as other ones, which I guess might be more for well-being and things like that. Do you think that's mostly lack of confidence or knowledge, or is there something else going on there?
Well, that's something we don't actually know, Natalie. So that's going to be the focus of Beth's interview study that she's going to do with the link workers, is that we want to sort of unpick that idea to find out why it is that some of them don't make regular use of these types of activities or programs.
Okay, so I think we've answered all the questions that we had waiting. Thank you very much, Esther, for sharing your time with us. That's great. If anyone is interested in getting involved with Esther's study or has friends or relatives who they think would be interested, then in the chat somewhere you should be able to find her email address, or you can just email us at OPENARMS. That's definitely in the chat, so you can just copy that email address from the chat function, or go to our website and contact us through our website as well. So if you are interested in getting involved, or if you have friends or family members who you think might be interested, then do drop us a line. We'd be delighted to hear from you. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for all your great questions. Saved me having to think of anything to ask. And as Louise said earlier, we're taking a break for the summer now. So our next session of Meet the Researcher will be on Monday, the 27th of September at 1 o'clock. Thanks again. Hope everyone has a lovely summer break, and we hope to see some of you back here in the autumn. Thank you.